A very good morning and welcome to Morning Express on this Tuesday, what date is it today? 18th of February 2020. Glad to have you right here on Morning Express. As usual, Morning Express comes to you every morning, every weekday between 6 and 9 a.m. And we ensure that we bring you the very, very latest. Shortly, we're going to be converging with Spice FM and looking at what's making headlines on the dailies before we get back in studio, where we're going to be looking at matters politics on Political Point right here on Morning Express. I welcome you and encourage you to participate in the show, and that's going to be happening via SMS, or you can also do that via Twitter on social media. The hashtag is KTN Morning Express. If you would like to tweet, you can tweet me directly, and that's at Michael G. Gitonga or at KTN News KE. We'll be more than happy to hear from you. Later on, we'll also be looking at your money and giving you details of how you can ensure that the year, at least by the time we get to the end of the year, you're more wiser, money-wise. And that's all going to be lined up right here for you as we do that. But for now, we'd like to cross over to Spice FM, where we've got the Situation Room that's going to be looking at what's making headlines on the dailies.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times.
To you on the 18th day of February 2020.
Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric
as well as our social media handles where we live streaming Spice FM KE on Facebook and Twitter. How you doing? So we have Trix Ngado from KTN Morning Express. How you doing?
How you doing?
The only way
Morning
to start
Express.
your day.
I mean, if you're watching from home and you're wondering what's going on, this is our usual convergent, and that's why I'm in the Situation Room and not the studio.
Yes, indeed. And then we have Ndu Oko. Good morning, Ndu.
Eric Latif, how are you?
Me?
Yes.
Me, I'm fine.
Oh, fantastic. Good morning.
Are you fine?
I am.
Good.
I'm fine too.
How about you, City?
I am very well, thank you.
Good.
Hi, CT.
Hi.
Morning, Trix.
Morning.
This is what we do. So you do the same.
Good morning.
Good
Trix,
morning.
good morning.
I'm passing,
Eric, good morning.
Good morning to you, City.
Yes.
passing out free salutations.
Yes.
And is there any other form of salutation? Ndu?
Free? Hey, there are people who sell theirs, man.
Yeah.
This
Tell
place
you.
you come from is strange.
Haven't you ever met somebody who asks, unauza pesa ngapi?
Yeah.
Unauza salamu? So let's take a look at what's in the headlines this morning. What do you have, Trix?
We have the coronavirus that's still making headlines. On the Daily Nation today, you're told that please help us. This is what Kenyans are saying. Desperate pleas for rescue of 100 Kenyan students stranded in Chinese city, that is Wuhan, after the outbreak. And it's important to note that there are thousands and upon thousands of Kenyans in China. Many of them are students. Many of them are just trying to make to work in normal professional jobs, and others are just trying to do business. So it's not unusual to find this large number of Kenyans in that part of the world rather. So they are calling for help. They need evacuation, but obviously the embassy came out to say that it is more advisable for people not to be, traveling to the country right now because of
traveling to the country, okay, but all the other countries are evacuating their people. Why is it that we Kenyans cannot evacuate our own? Can you imagine when you are in a city? This is a foreign country. You've now been locked down. You've been told you cannot leave your house. Your family is calling you on a daily basis and asking you, how are you? What are you? How are you feeling? Are you feeling sick? And then you keep hearing the numbers are spiking.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is definitely an issue. We heard the Kenya's ambassador to China yesterday, Sarah Sarem, being quite emotional about, this is the most difficult point in her career, whereby she feels that she's hand-tied and she can't do anything in terms of getting, Kenyans out, or at least listening to their pleas. And it looks to me a bit of a quagmire because, all right, here's a situation where the rest of the world, like you said, is reacting. And Kenyans are
Stranded
and are asking to be brought home, but it's not happening. And she seemed to be in a hand-tied position as of yesterday. She says, look, there's nothing that I can do. I would want to bring them home, but I can't. Now, I don't understand between this not being able to and can't and, negotiations with the government. Are we going to send a plane to bring them out? What are we going to do? But she seems to be in a position where, look, only diplomacy is working here, where she can talk but not act.
And it has to boil down to our government reacting. She can only do so much or say so much. She can only comfort them and talk about the individual cases that she's heard about, the young lady down there, the student, the mother that is stranded down there. But unless the government actually, does something, like you said, there isn't much that she can do. And I love that she has come out to speak. The previous ambassador was... Let me not even go into it, because you would wonder where he is if you were living there, because you would rarely ever hear any concern or you wouldn't even know whether he's stranded or he's just unable to act or there's a problem somewhere. So I love that Sarah Serem actually is coming out to paint the picture as it is, that she can't do anything to help.
City, what is it?
This is something that we're probably going to discuss in greater length during the hour when I'm making my presentation for the day. But if you want to understand how it is, these little issues we keep discussing, little in the sense that they occur on a daily basis and we talk about them, and you never see the full manifestation of them until such a thing happens. The utter neglect that the government has for its citizenry. We've said this, and sometimes it seems like all we're doing is attacking the government and saying things that are negative about the government. But it isn't. When we talk about the segment we have of lest we forget, this is a lest we forget, another one that has come into being. We talked about the locusts, we talk about the floods, we talk about our schools. Again, now we have a situation where we have Kenyans who are in China legally. We know why they went there. We are represented by a mission in China, but the person who's in charge is telling there's nothing I can do now. People would rather be quarantined in their own country.
Yes.
True.
You at least feel you're close to home, you can talk to people. It's a totally different feeling. That one is a feeling of complete abandonment. You've been abandoned completely.
When your government tells you there's nothing I can do.
What on earth do they mean?
What do you mean there's nothing you can do? Honestly, I mean, it just...
What do they mean?
Organize for the people to come home. There's direct and utter concern. Somebody is there, they've been quarantined, they've been told you cannot get out, they are not, they haven't been, confirmed that they have contracted this virus, but there's fear.
And aside from the fear, these are people who cannot live their normal lives. They cannot go out to buy veggies or groceries.
You can't
they cannot
do anything.
They're literally indoors, probably hungry, unable to shop or do their jobs and earn a living. They are literally, it's not life as usual. So it's aside from the fear, they're not living like decent human beings. They're not living the dream that they went out there to chase. So we need to do something to help them out, honestly, at
Indeed
this point.
We do. The Standard headline this morning, tallow oil, the big lie. All right. So it's basically saying the company that promised Kenyans oil riches is in a financial mess. Saddled with huge debts, the troubled oil exporter is cutting down operations, sacking staff and seeking a suitor for what remains of the shell. The government is stranded with a dead dream and empty coffers. Pages 2, 3, 4 of the Standard this morning. It's looking back at what is it that's ailing tallow oil? Internationally, of course, we know the other time when the senior executives had to resign, had to quit because of the troubles that they have, and now they have had to restructure countrywide, internationally, globally. We'll be looking into this story in greater detail from 6 o'clock. But the other headline, of course, in the Standard is the DCI revisits Ruto's office and DOD to bust the 39 billion Echesa network. This is another one of those stories.
Oh, it's interesting because there's a similar headline on the front page of The Nation. DCI tightens the noose on Ruto office. Of course, the fake 40 billion arms tender. Explosive details emerge. The adjectives are fantastic. Details emerge of how Polish firm's directors fell for sophisticated criminal ring, also suspected to have used President Kenyatta's name to con businessman Morali of 10 million shillings last year. Did we talk about this yesterday? We talked about the fact that it was the same kind of con that we saw previously. But now details emerged that the firm directors fell for the sophisticated criminal ring also suspected to have used President Kenyatta's name last year. So, of course, giving details into that on page 4 and 5, they talk about the fact that 14 officials from Harambee House Annex, the building that houses the office of the Deputy President, have been identified for questioning by the Directorate of Criminal Investigations as more explosive details about the 40 billion shilling fake arms deal continue to unravel. It includes a female MP from Central Kenya who was instrumental in convincing the directors of Eco Advanced Technologies LLC that they were in good hands and that they will clinch the deal. Moving on just swiftly, yesterday, detectives camped at both Harambee House Annex and at the Department of Defense headquarters at Ulinzi House. They were in the company of Mr. Mustafa Mamdo, a Director of Eco Advanced Technologies. The meeting between the MP and Mr. Stanley Kozlowski, the chief executive of the American firm, took place toward the end of October last year at the KICC on the sidelines of the Home Expo that was taking place. So, of course, giving many details into this, but more and more individuals start to turn up. Interestingly, Mr. Chesa was fired around the same time the 10 million shilling scam happened that Mr. Morali and the name of the president were involved with 10 million shillings.
You know, this story, basically, and the way it's unraveling, it points out to something. So the DOD, of course, issues a statement, says these people came and we have established that they did not meet with anybody who has the authority to discuss procurement. But the DOD statement is not saying that these people did not come in. So these people actually accessed the DOD. They accessed an office in DOD. They were able to access whatever junior official there was in DOD. And then the same thing the ODP is saying. So if people can actually access such high security installations, the DOD, the President's office, State House, what exactly are we talking about in this country?
But then there's this angle. When you listen to most stories that deal with cons, they usually try to lend legitimacy to whatever plot they have by naming some big individual, some government connection. Because you see, they accessed DOD, but they didn't meet anyone who was of any consequence. They did, it is said, go to the DP's. So it is. It was reported. They did go to the DP's office to some boardroom and a meeting that lasted 23 minutes, according to some footage. But then, what does it mean that they actually, the people named in this story, for example, the DP, were actually involved in this? Or was this just to make them comfortable enough to have confidence in whatever they were being sold?
And
or
it doesn't really
matter.
The ifisms and the whataboutisms don't really matter. Or if these people came, they only spent 23 minutes here. If they came, they were not able to access, senior government officials. It doesn't matter. The point is, somebody can use your name, can access your office, can wear a uniform and go and sit in a city hotel and call themselves General Soil.
Yeah, because even
the thing is, if they can do that, then we're looking at severe laxity in certain establishments in this country. Severe laxity.
Complacency and complacency.
And to ask yourself the question, because look,
Not
throughout this whole story, talking about the fact that they were granted VIP treatment, they were not subjected to any kind of security checks.
Yeah, because
they
were
given
walking
the
around
full
with the
treatment.
minister.
Yeah.
So this is the question being, somebody with an ex-minister, he was no longer a minister. He was no longer a cabinet secretary. So the question arises, you can't.
They were facilitated clearly.
Exactly.
Yes.
You and I can't just walk into the annex and be given tea and coffee and say, please sit down and let's have a meeting.
There's a criminal network
Somebody
that works
absolutely.
in this
Somebody facilitated this. There's someone in there who was doing something that they should not have been doing. And those are the questions that need to be asked.
Because we were told in the story, but to clinch the deal, they were told they needed two things: political and military connections. Mr. Echesa's role, courtesy of his deep links in Kenya's political circles, was to make sure the government plays ball. There you go.
It's conmanship.
Yeah.
But remember, it's
order.
not entirely conmanship, not entirely. In the previous government, when President Kibaki was at the helm, we had a permanent secretary whose role was to oversee the ethics and the morality of the country. And he pointed a gentleman by the name of John Githongo, he pointed fingers directly at not just ministries, but individuals. It cost 2 ministers their job. There's one gentleman by the name of Murungaru. There's another one who followed, called Miraria. And remember the association that Miraria had. He was considered one of the closest friends that President Kibaki had. Then the case followed. Now, we will argue and say there is a network, and there probably is. But this was direct, a government official pointing fingers at other government officials directly. Githongo paid a heavy price for that, actually, if you remember correctly. But he pointed out. What seems to be true is that these networks, they don't really go anywhere. They just mutate.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
If we're talking about networks, remember, we've lost a minister in a really sensitive and executive ministry called Ministry of Finance, and the principal secretary out.
Yep.
And something similar. This time we're not buying arms. This time we're building dams. So this is a situation where you're being asked to believe something you obviously cannot see, and to believe that the amounts that have been mentioned and that were located in the budget weren't actually the same amounts that were being spent. Then you're given a figure, 7 billion. That's really the figure that you should be looking at.
Only.
Yes.
Billion.
Yes, and then further revelations show, actually, it was a lot more than that. And there's a lot more now. This is an ongoing saga that we have. So even if we're going to point fingers, are we going to point fingers at individuals, or are we going to point fingers at a culture that has over time mutated in this country to the point where it's now a monster, a full-blown
We should point fingers
monster.
at both.
we should
Both,
point
yeah.
at both.
Individuals
because even
and the
the
system.
culture is being propelled by individuals. At the end of the day, the culture is not static. It's being, perpetrated
yeah.
by individuals.
And that
over
what
time.
ifism, onlyism, and what about him is what is perpetrating it. Saying only 23 minutes,
It's like saying only 7 billion.
yeah. Only 23 minutes, only 7 billion, only accessed, just a boardroom.
Didn't
Only-
access the DP's office.
Didn't access. It doesn't matter.
I wasn't even there.
It happened.
Yes, was only at the
me.
reception.
It doesn't matter. 16 minutes after 6 o'clock, this is a situation room on Spice FM, and also multicasting on KTN News, KTN Morning Express. That's why we have Trix Ingado, Nduoko, Eric Latif, and CT Muga. Let's take a look at the weather forecast for the day, and then we continue with the newspaper review. Good morning.
We're going to see mostly cloudy conditions in Nairobi, currently at 17 degrees, and expected rain showers later on with highs of 26 and lows of 17. Taking a look at what's happening in Eldoret at 14 degrees, it's going to be a clear and sunny day with highs of 26 and lows of 12. In Nyeri at 16 degrees, it's going to be partly cloudy through the day. Expect rain later with highs of 26. And in Malindi, we're looking at 27 degrees currently, partly cloudy conditions through the day with highs of 32 rather. And in Kisumu, we're looking at 21 degrees, clear skies, partly cloudy conditions later with highs of 30 and lows of 19. Further afield in Kampala, 21 degrees and mostly cloudy conditions, rain expected later with highs of 28 and lows of 20. Taking a look at Dar es Salaam, where we see 27 degrees, a warm day, partly cloudy conditions, high of 33 and lows of 20. Further down south in Johannesburg at 19 degrees, periodic clouds with rain expected later, highs of 26 and lows of 16. Taking a look at what's going on in Lagos, highs of 36, hazy conditions, it's currently at 28 degrees with lows of 26. Taking a look in Europe at Paris, clear skies at 6 degrees, highs of 12 and lows of 6. In London, we're looking at 6 degrees as well, clear skies, rain expected later with highs of 11 and lows of 3. Finally, in New York at 6 degrees, clear skies, partly cloudy conditions to follow later with highs of 10 and lows of 2.
mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Eric Latif, and me, Trix Ilgado. And today we're taking a look at what's making headlines in the papers, and we were on that very scandalous story of Kenya's latest scandalous story that is cutting across all papers, having the Daily Nation telling us that DCI tightens the noose on Ruto's office, and then we have the Standard going with DCI revisits Ruto office and DOD to bust 39 billion in Chesa network. What do you make of this?
Well, I think, just looking at, it's interesting that the play on words on the Nation, for example, tighten the noose on Ruto's office, and just what we're talking about now, about having a culture of impunity. It's the office. There's certain things that were allowed to take place during this time. And that meant somebody opened the door, somebody allowed, there was some kind of laxity that was allowed to happen. Nobody was asking questions. If you're coming in and doing something that you should not be doing, nobody's asking you to be accountable, nobody's asking questions. And then we get something like this. It's a normal way of doing things, apparently.
Maybe
However,
not.
there are individuals who are allowing this to happen.
Maybe not. You see, remember, the DP's office is a public office. Start there. In theory, anyone can access it, in theory. But with most government offices, you want to go there, usually, if it's essentially a high security area, you need prior information, they need to book you in so people know that you are coming.
So somebody allowed it to happen.
Meaning it was planned. What I'm getting at is that, and it may not have been the first time this had happened, because from everything that you read, it's clear that, one, the former minister was known that he was not an unknown.
Of course.
Exactly.
Yes. And it wasn't strange for him to actually go up that building. But he was a minister. It shouldn't be strange. Even if he's no longer a minister, it's still not strange because there's nothing that bars him from visiting those offices.
And nobody was
Nothing
going to
whatsoever.
ask the question, what
No.
were you doing here?
And he's a known ally of the DP.
Yes, even if he wasn't a known ally, the truth is, as a former minister, he would have, and it is recently, he would have easy access to not just that office, but any government office.
Yeah.
That is my view. Okay?
It's true.
The issue that we are discussing here is not even the people who accompanied him. No. Even DOD, even you today, if you know anyone of whatever rank who works at DOD and they are informed that you're coming, you can go into DOD.
Right.
Okay?
But then there was the absolute denial yesterday.
No.
We saw it in a statement.
No. The way it was written, they did not say that they didn't meet with anybody. What the paper report indicated was they did not meet with the people who were related directly to what...
To procurement.
Yes. That's what the newspaper stated. It didn't say they didn't come in. It didn't
That's
say
a
they didn't
statement
meet
by
with anybody.
DOD spokesman
Yes.
Bogita Ongeri. So basically he's saying, yes, we have clearly seen that they came in, but they did not meet anybody who is involved in procurement
Yes.
of any military equipment or security equipment. But they clearly met somebody. And they clearly was facilitated to enter by somebody. And it's not the first time. We have seen other reports previously of somebody even going to DOD,
Even more
entering
bizarre.
an office, and an office has,
His
a
name
sign.
on the door.
Plus title,
Somebody-
Plus
plus rank.
title of
And
somebody
you
who
enter and
does
you
not
find
exist.
somebody wearing military uniform.
Would you doubt?
Yeah.
Would you doubt?
Not only that, when someone ushers you in, we're also wearing military uniform.
Yes.
How do you doubt? And you're in DOD.
I mean-
That's conmanship, basically. And I would wonder, now that this came out, the DP, should he have come out and said it was only, why wouldn't just heads roll?
This is the only zim that I'm talking about.
Yeah,
It should-
why? Yeah, heads
He
should have
should
rolled.
have
Yeah.
said, I need to find out exactly what is going on. All this denying and saying I didn't. Nobody asked you whether you did or didn't.
Yeah.
There are things that are going on within your office
Under your
that
nose.
clearly are suspect. You should have asked the question, or rather made the statement
Yep.
that I too am incensed by this,
Yes.
number one. Number two, I want to find out what is going on. And number three, I have ordered the investigation of such within my right to do so as the holder of this office. Not coming to deny things. Nobody accused you of anything. Come out and say very clearly, I also don't know what is
Yeah.
going on,
Yep.
which is all right. We're not going to call you weak for that. But to say that I didn't do anything when nobody asked and actually said that you did, now somebody wants to ask very many questions after what you've denied.
Right.
But remember,
But at this point, say that I too need to find out what's going on. How
Remember-
on earth can such things be happening in my office?
if we pause for a second, you will find that the deputy president is in an unfortunate situation. Why I say so is because in this country, for the longest time, anything that appears to be negative seems to point towards the deputy president. Now, none of these things have gone to a court of law or have been proven to be true.
But-
So they remain in the realm of allegations, albeit they're really rather many.
Right.
But give a dog a bad name. That's the phrase, isn't it? Okay? So because this individual has been accused so often, it seems to be the plausible thing that when one other accusation is leveled against him, people assume that it is true. I am not even talking about his denial. I'm not even going into that yet. The assumption seems to be he must be guilty. That, in my opinion, is a wrong assumption.
It is, but then it doesn't that point to the need for him to be quite vocal in handling it, and being incensed.
Let's look at that.
Because an image taint,
even in an exaggerated way.
Look at the trail of comments that the DP has made every time these issues have come up. He hasn't deviated from the norm. He has not deviated. It's one of two things. Either why am I the one being targeted?
Or whatever he said is politics.
The response, and if you give it time, just give it time, we are going to be talking about the BBI, and suddenly the former Prime Minister will be at the head of it and what he wants to do. Meaning, his responses have acquired a pattern. You can almost predict how he is going to respond, but it still does not mean that he is guilty of what he's being accused of.
Of course
Yeah,
not.
it's true,
But the thing is, they always say that you tell your story first before somebody else has an opportunity to. Because then you have control over what the narrative that is out there.
And the definition of madness is saying that doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. He can't keep on handling this bad optics the same way. Perhaps this time, he should actually find out who is letting these people in, even if they didn't know. Yeah, do something.
Trixie, you are aware that you have brought into question the mental capability.
No. That's don't put words in my mouth. I'm saying if he needs to break the cycle of him, that question that he's asking, why always me, then he needs to do something different, react differently.
So that it isn't always him.
Yeah, so that people can actually think twice before they're pushing these narratives in his direction or using his name to gain whatever publicity or whatever agenda they're trying to further.
In African folklore,
Yeah.
there were certain animals that had the unfortunate position of always being the villain. Okay? There were other animals that were considered to be the clever ones.
Yeah.
There were the other ones who were considered slow, but they were juxtaposed with wisdom.
Wise.
All right? Now, if in Kenyan politics, a narrative has taken root, and that narrative has characterized you as a certain person, it is a very, very difficult task to move away.
To shake it, it's going to be very hard.
From that characterization.
Yeah, it will be hard, which, of course, then of course it will be hard, but there are very few things in this world that are very easy to have done. And I think if he's really serious about shaking this off, there's certain things that he could do. All right. Speaking of shame and other things, you need to look at really what's happening with the Kisumu Water and Sewerage Company.
The lack of poison.
Right. This is a bit worrying because Kiwasco, as it's known, lacks the capacity to clean the toxic waste it receives daily. And get this, it is pumping at least 7 dangerous chemicals into Lake Victoria, then drawing water from another section of the lake, which it then purifies for supplies to town residents.
Disgusting.
Okay? Yeah, it's actually quite nasty to look at this and to see exactly what is going on in terms of what the residents of Kisumu are ingesting. And of course, going into serious detail about what's going on there. But something to note is that the effluent discharge point is carefully hidden deep inside a thicket, about 200 meters away from busy Kisumu-Busia Highway. And it took more than an hour walking in circles along the stream to find it. All around our tiny farms, mind you, growing vegetables, all right? From vegetables, of course, to napier grass. It looks very nice on the surface. But below is actually a cesspool of disease. 1,800 in terms of numbers is the total E. coli and chloroforms that they've found present in 100 milliliter sample of lake water. There could be more because the gauge could only reach 1,800. And it could be more, it could be much higher.
This is an interesting story.
60 times.
This is an alarming story.
Yes, 60 times.
I like the fact that Nation actually went all out and said, let's do a long series on this.
Right.
It took time. When such a headline takes, such a story takes the headlines, it's a good thing.
Well, look at this now. 60
running
times
away from the politics.
are the times above. This is 60 times above what is allowed by NEMA. This is the same level found in raw sewage. clean water should have 0 E. coli, while a total of chloroforms should not be more than 30 in every 100 mils of water. And in this, they found 1,800. And this is the same water. They might tell you that it's from a different part of the lake, but if you want to apply logic, all of this is mixing.
Yeah.
All right? But they take water from a different part of the lake, purify it, and then supply this to the residents of Kisumu.
Yeah, and the story.
Then we're asking ourselves questions about disease.
cancer.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Pause for a single second and ask yourself what it is that lives in this water.
Fish.
And
What
it is-
doesn't, at this point, what doesn't live in this water?
Actually, I was referring to fish. And the fish directly ingest everything that you have said. What you will find, whether it's minerals or whether
Metals.
whatever, you will find that everything that the University of Nairobi, the microbiology department were involved in this process for the longest time. What you will find is that everything that they found was way, way above the accepted level. When I say way, way above, it's like the accepted level may be 0.2 and what the percent, and what they find is 46%. So now you actually wonder, how many times over can this thing kill you?
I mean, seriously.
And we were told from yesterday's story that 12 species of fish that were originally found in the lake have disappeared. Only the Nile perch has been able to adapt
To survive this poison.
to adapt to the metals and the pollution, which is ingesting, and therefore that means we are all ingesting. And you know how Kenyans are like, fish from the lake is the best. We don't we avoid the fish pond fish because it doesn't have flavor. So we are all ingesting this type of this fish, these metals. And I was speaking to Joe Mutambo, who heads the Water Resources Authority yesterday, and he did say every time he goes down there and he tries to close down some of these organizations and people who are polluting the lakes, they go to the courts, and after a day this decision is overturned and they are opened up again. So even the authorities that are mandated with making sure that this stops, and
Those are
unable
good
to.
excuses that the Water Resources Authority
But
comes
what
up with.
can they do?
Well, I mean, maybe one thing that we
powers.
can do is make
They've
it
got the
very
law
clear.
behind them.
They have the law.
What
They could,
people
if
do
they really
is-
wanted
But it's
to.
the same laws that overturns
No,
the decisions.
the officials themselves circumvent the law. They go into very many of these places basically looking for, and I'm going to say this openly, looking for handouts and looking for bribes.
I think we need to be very
They come
clear.
in there, they're saying, we are the Water Resources Authority, this is what you've done, and can you see us, or we take you to court. Taking drastic
Ili
actions.
tumalize hii
Ili
mambo.
tumalize- Yes. So when Water Resource Authority comes and tells us, you know what, people go to court. Look, you've got the mandate, you've got the law behind you. If you're following the law, nobody will go to court. No court will uphold a bad decision.
It's interesting to note that, however, just as we go to break, is that this can explain in part why respiratory diseases have overtaken malaria as the deadliest diseases in Nyanza. And these are also there are also far too many people battling diseases like cancer.
And when we look at the picture on the top page, I mean, what is that even?
It's a very scary story. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Also multicasting on KTN News and www.spicefm.co.ke, as well as our social media handles, SpiceFMKE on Facebook and SpiceFMKE on Twitter. This is the first and only 24/7 audio-visual radio station. We have Trix Ngado from KTN News. Let's take a look at the traffic, and then the conversation continues.
Tuesday morning, let's see if it's anything different from what we saw yesterday. In Wayaki Way, the traffic has started at Uthiru Junction to Kabete. It's moving, however, it's moving quite slowly right now. Of course, the 80 at the Red Hill bypass is an option to use this morning. Wayaki Way, then down towards the Westlands roundabout, is moving, but moving quite slowly. Langata Road traffic has started really quite far up today, right around the junction that connects with going towards Rongai. Let's see what that looks like in a short while. Mombasa Road near GM moving very slowly, but moving all the same. Far back then towards Cabanas, in and outbound today, for some reason there is traffic. Coming off of Thika Road, of course, it's snaking all the way back to Safari Park Hotel, and then that's inbound to town. Of course, getting around the Utali Drift, some traffic to be experienced. Of course, Muthaiga heading to town, a little bit of traffic there as well. This is the time when it's all opening up. In about an hour or so, we'll be right in the middle of traffic hour. We'll let you know what it looks like there. Give us a call, 0719-012-600, or send us a shout on Twitter, SpiceFMKE. Let us know what you see.
You're watching Morning Express or listening to Spice FM or both on either of our platforms. And we're having the Situation Room going on right here with Ndu Oko, City Mugas, Eric Latif, and myself, Trix Ingado. Today we are taking a look at some of the top stories, which include the Lake of Poison, which is a series that has been running on the Daily Nation. And today they're telling us more about the polluters and who are getting away with murder. And one of the big polluters, as we have been told in this series, is a prison in Kodiaga that literally drains its effluence into the lake, which is where we get our fish, which raw. Yep. And I'm told that this is not something that happens just at the Lake Victoria, even at the coast. Most restaurants, most of these 5-star whatevers are draining into the ocean. So what we are seeing as this beautiful ocean, we're told that you would never go to the beach and take a swim in the Indian Ocean if you knew half of the stuff that winds up in there.
That they do.
Yeah. So you might want to rethink.
And here we are talking about NEMA saying, we can't go to court. Come on.
You know, it's a sad story, but lest we forget that our government and government agencies and departments are peopled and populated by Kenyans. So
humans walking,
Kenyans,
thinking, talking.
Yes, Kenyans. And the unfortunate thing is that this ministry of impunity that we keep speaking of seems to not only be influencing other ministries, but it has taken center stage. It is the voice that seems to be heard in almost every department and almost every sector of not just the economy, but within the government. Why the government is sensitive is because that is where all our services and all the things that we hope to do for the country, that's where they are centered. That's the engine. That's where things are supposed to work. That's where the country is supposed to be built. And if this is the situation that we're talking about, woe betide us.
Other headlines before we look at the top story. Court bars vetting of Sonko pick for deputy. So the High Court has barred the Nairobi County Assembly from vetting Governor Mike Mbuvi Sonko's deputy governor nominee, Anne Kananu. This is because somebody had gone to court saying Sonko is violating the court order. Court order that has barred him from accessing office or from interfering with witnesses. And he says, nominating somebody into that office is akin to violating those court orders. So Justice Mombingoge said, wait, so let me hear this first. MCAs, please do not vet Anne Kananu.
Well, remember that particular ruling, there was the debate around it still actually rages on. When that ruling was made, what did they mean?
Exactly. And I think, I'm not really sure what the protocol is when we look at the justice system or judges then sending out information about what they meant. Of course, I think there can be a lot of lobbying to ask, can you please interpret this so that it can be very, very clear? It could be that the subjects understand exactly what the ruling was and choose to flout it, or that they really, really don't know how far they can reach with this. But I think some clarity is needed because we actually have coming out of the office of the DPP that he himself was not very clear what this meant.
What exactly?
And we keep taking ourselves back and forth. Nominate, don't nominate. Where are we?
What clarification does anyone need? I mean, the whole sense of it was that if you're found to be under investigation and there needs to be time for that to happen, you need to step away so that you do not influence the investigation or whatever is happening. Because I picture it as a murder scene that has been cordoned off. Nobody.
So to you, it's clear cut.
Yeah, it's clear cut.
But therein lies the debate.
If you're my best friend and I'm being investigated and you're in charge of this studio, and then I say now, because I'm not there, take over. What's going to prevent me from using you to influence or to avert justice or whatever?
But understand that in the same breath, the same court says he does not cease to be governor. In this example.
Yeah.
He's still governor.
Means there's no need for a new election for a new governor. We still have a governor who has been benched as we investigate. So
That's
I think it's clear.
Because
the bit is that
the court cannot ungovern you
because they did not elect him.
The only way you can be ungoverned is by going to the Senate.
Yeah.
That's the court that can ungovern
MCAs basically impeaching you and then the Senate agrees.
It's a political process. It's not a judicial process. Not really.
Or also the judicial process if you're jailed for longer than 6 months.
Right.
The entire process goes through and you're convicted and jailed for more than 6 months. Then
if you're brought into the judicial system through jailing, then of course the judicial system takes precedence.
Yep.
There's really no
I think
harm.
it's really direct.
No. There's no harm in being clear. There's no harm
We need
with
clarity.
clarity.
It is
With
clear.
clarity in
Guys.
this case.
No.
The way it
Wewe
is-
ni governor,
the way it's
huwezi
clear.
fanya kazi mpaka tumalize.
Wewe ni
hii
governor,
kesi. Hii kesi.
ulichaguliwa
you
na
are-
watu.
Sasa ungoje tu kidogo.
the court cannot overturn the will of the people. They elected this person, not directly.
Overturning
The
would mean
circumstances-
attacking you
but that-
completely.
yes.
Yeah.
So, look,
So we haven't done that. We've told you just sit.
if for example now you need any law that is passed by the county assembly to become law, it needs to be signed by the governor. Are you saying that the governor cannot sign in new laws?
He can.
Because you've told him he's
Because
still
you've told
governor.
him to.
You've told him he's still governor.
Yeah.
But you said that
Clarity is required here.
it is necessary at this point to say
What we're introducing
to make it
is
clear,
the
like you're
debate
making it clear to
that
a child.
exists
Yeah.
in this space. And that's why this clarity is being called for.
And anybody can then now say, because it's not clear, I thought I could do one, two, or the other thing.
Yep.
And that's why I did it. Now, unless you come and tell me that, what we are saying is, these 20 things, you cannot do them. These 5 spaces, you may not operate within them. These 10 people, you may not speak. It really needs to be very clear, because then you have individuals like Mike Mbuvi Sonko who's going to say, well, I didn't know. It wasn't clear to me. I thought I could still go ahead and do this.
I have nominated new people to get into the CECs. I have nominated somebody to become deputy governor. Speaking of deputy governor, there's a case that had been lodged in Nyeri against the appointment of Caroline Karogo as deputy governor of Nyeri. All right, and somebody who had gone to court saying that this was before the law that was passed by the Senate had actually been passed on how to appoint a deputy governor. But then the court said, look, Dr. Karogo was appointed in accordance with the law as provided by the Supreme Court's advisory opinion on March 9th, 2018. So Dr. Karogo is in office legally. Officials' illegal contract change may cost 3.7 billion shillings. We can only lose 3.7 billion shillings in a case here. Managed equipment services. So there's this Senate committee that has been hearing this issue of the managed equipment services and the scandal around it. Last week, we saw the Solicitor General appearing before them and saying the Attorney General was not aware of some of these contract details. Now we've seen the CS for Health on page 8 of the Standard meeting the committee again yesterday and saying there was a contract here with a certain company that was negotiated after the contract has already been awarded. It was being negotiated, and it says if you cancel this contract, you'll have to pay 80% of the contract amount. So if you can't cancel the contract, which is about 4.9 billion shillings, we have to pay the contractor 3.7 billion just because of cancelling a contract. Yet the contract itself was unprocedural and all, and the Attorney General has said, this contract was wrong. It's skewed against the government.
And essentially,
Criminal enterprise.
they're also saying that the company that's at the center of this, 7 Seas, stood to benefit.
Yeah.
Not just benefit. The government seemed to benefit absolutely nothing, and they seem to benefit
The company more.
This is why I always ask
it's
when
crazy.
when we are making these deals, do we not have lawyers, experts who
do.
can dig through, find with a fine tooth
We have
comb?
the Office of the Attorney
Yeah.
General
Yeah.
that is required to basically
Yes.
give
job.
advice to the government. Now, if the Office of the Attorney General is not
Yeah.
involved, so the
How
AG
can
comes
they
and
give
says
advice?
later.
we do, but somehow we're only always appearing to be on the losing end every single time. And there's a multinational. I can't blame them because they're looking for something. They're not engaging us for nothing.
No,
you
we
know?
must blame them.
Yeah.
Why?
Why we must blame them is if you're a business entity and we do understand that you're there to make profit,
Yes.
it is stupid and short-sighted if you engage in a deal that will expose you as not only being greedy, but having absolutely you must pretend to have interest in the people you do business with.
You're looking for money.
Yes,
it's
you
business.
must. Do you hear how nations make statements about the help, the aid, the progress and the development that they're bringing?
Pharmaceuticals.
All
They
in the
don't
name
care.
of profit. That's what I'm saying. You must pretend. These fellows...
You cannot basically go and negotiate a contract
That
that,
only benefits
favors you.
no, predominantly.
But also
Silly.
CT.
If
yes,
I was seated at a boardroom and I was sitting here representing Spice FM, let's say, and I'm supposed to, our goal is to make money.
You'll get the
and
best
I
deal.
notice that you're making 1 shilling, yet I'm making 100. I'm not going to speak out. I'm going to sign the damn thing because it's your fault for not making sure.
And you will lose that
Yeah.
job
And
very
you will
soon
lose.
after that.
But
Yeah.
also CT, the government officials who are colluding in allowing this to happen.
It's the collusion factor that I'm trying to lean towards, because we always seem to
because
be
a private enterprise is there. I mean,
it's their job to care for us.
I squeeze as much as I can out of this
actually
deal. And then you, as the government, you should be able to ensure that you're squeezing as much as possible.
It's not my job to care for your people.
It is actually. Why? If these are people you are doing, okay, let me give you an example, perhaps. Yes.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why antiretrovirals work so well is that over time, they don't just expand or increase your lifespan by a few years. You can live for as long as your creator intended you to live. All right? So it begs the question, these pharmaceutical companies, do they have the capacity to actually find a cure? That's where your question comes in. Are they in the business of curing people or making money?
Making money.
Yes, you are better off, whether it's diabetes, these conditions that are lifelong.
Yes.
If someone can provide you with something that ensures you live close to life, and you live for a long time, it is a wonderful thing. That's what I mean. That's their corporate social responsibility. They don't just keep you well, but they keep you really well. But you are also a client for life.
Yeah, but then that's why there are countries such as India and China who decide, you know what, we're going to make our own medicine that serves our own people. Because when we collaborate with certain entities, they're profiting off of us being
But they do the same thing.
They're doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, but at least the margins are
I'll be raising
different.
this issue later in the show.
They do the same thing.
But they're different, I'm sure.
Looking at how this kind of deals are being signed.
Yes.
Looking at how these kind of deals are being signed, this particular one, medical equipment deal, looking at another one where we are seeing 6 billion shillings prison bills are illegal, according to an audit that has been done 3 times. Now it's being subjected to a 4th audit because people are saying, no, we supplied and the government has not paid us. And the government is saying, we are auditing your bills or your invoices. And we are saying, look, what you're presenting here is not the situation on the ground. 3-4 times. This kind of deals and the kind of, shenanigans that we are seeing in government, I'll be raising that later. This is a Situation Room. It's 13 minutes to 7 o'clock. We're broadcasting, of course, on Spice FM in Nairobi, 94.4, Mombasa, 87.9, 102.5 in Kisumu, 96.0 in Nakuru, 96.7 in Eldoret, 90.9 in Nyeri, and Malindi, 97.7. We also stream live on Facebook, Spice FM KE, on Twitter at Spice FM KE, as well as our website, www.spicefm.co.ke. This morning, we're also on KTN News Morning Express. Good morning.
Spice FM. Spice up your life.
How are you?
Breathing life into the 80s.
This is Morning Express. My name is Trix Ingado.
94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Platforms. And today we're taking a look at the
mature, intelligent talk every morning.
This morning, and that has
Spice up yourself.
The big one, as the Standard has put it.
Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
With a huge debt, the troubled oil explorer is cutting down operations, sacking staff, and sending a suitor for the remains of the shell.
May I ask?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just,
Yes.
Forgive me for interrupting you. Is there oil?
Apparently, according to the reports.
Okay, so that headline is a little misleading, if I may say so.
Yes.
Because if there was no oil, then it would be a lie.
A lie. There is oil.
What seems to be the problem here is that this particular company has financial issues and it seems to be impacting on what they promised to do.
But City, how will we sell the paper if we just
No, not even that. No.
we explain it plainly like that?
Look. There can also be an issue of a lie. Do we have enough that can be exported? If we had enough that could be exported, why haven't we exported?
But at a glance, when you read this...
Because you're saying almost 9 years after the country announced its big find, hopes of becoming an oil exporter are fast fizzling out as Kenyans wake up to the reality that they may have been taken for a ride by a global adventurer. Basically, what this story is saying, look, Tullow came and told us, oh, yes, you guys, we have found Gamia 1 has some good oil, and Gamia 2, we have some oil that we can extract and export. So many years down the road, nothing is happening of that sort. Yeah, we still have now that Tullow itself having problems internationally, financial problems. It was banking on Kenya and Uganda as being the big players in the lucrative oil industry. A year later, these prospects have dimmed on the back of Tullow's unproductive business deals. It's believed that the firm is planning to sell its stake in Kenya. One of the rumored buyers was Total, but its chief executive, Patrick Poyan, last week shut down the speculation that they were buying this, saying, stop dreaming. No.
But in 2012, we were told by the then Minister for Energy with great clarity that the oil that we had in this country, of the depths, the quantities were distinctly more than what was in Uganda. So are we saying that we were lied to?
That's what this story is basically saying.
No, this story
we were
isn't
taken
saying
for
that.
a ride.
But
I think taking
this story isn't
in
saying
fact,
that.
being taken for a ride is talking about the capacity that Tullow has to
For
carry
actually
out
doing
these
this job.
exercises.
Yeah.
Yes,
Right?
it's not the
It's not
existence
about
of...
the existence of reserves in the
But
country.
by the way...
And if you look at this, it's not talking about Kenya oil or Turkana oil. It's saying Tullow oil.
It's
The
talking
big
about
lie is the lie that the
Tullow oil.
company
the company itself,
could have lied.
not the oil.
It's not that we
in
don't
this
have
country.
oil in the country.
No.
It's not all that. It's about the company's capacity to actually be able to extract and export our oil.
But is that what they present really? If that is now a clever interpretation that actually points to where the problem is, but is that what we have presented in the paper?
In fact, there's a section that says, for 3 decades, Tullow has been more than just an oil explorer. It has been an alchemist of sorts, a biblical David that has outwitted many Goliaths by turning impossibilities into possibilities, where oil and gas behemoths such as Shell, BP, Exxon, Total and Chevron only found traces of oil in Turkana. The British explorer found relatively high deposits of the mineral. The oil find, said Tullow, could be monetized, catapulting Kenya into the league of oil exporting countries. So if they're talking about a track record that has beat any of these other companies, it would give the impression that they have found it, and that they can now make us the next Nigeria.
And then the story continues to say, but now some experts have cast doubt on the size of the country's oil reserves, and the poor global prices of the commodity have added to the gloom. Further, the government and Tullow are yet to decide on how commercial oil production will proceed. There is also no infrastructure for evacuation oil on a large-scale basis, and the project is not backed by a vision on how this new oil wealth can be realized. So this whole program, apart from just the excitement that, Gamia 1 oil, that was it. Everything else beyond that has no clear plan, appears to have no clear plan, appears not to have the capacity to even extract this oil, appears not to have... We are not benefiting from it.
It's just taking me back to my previous argument of when we are making deals with foreign and multinational organizations, why is it that we're always on the losing end? Don't we have professionals who can actually verify that why does someone have to come from outside and tell us, here is a deal that will make you rich, and then a few months down the line being told, no, there's a way that this thing is not going to work like we anticipated.
Due
diligence. Seems like, we don't
due diligence,
do it.
actually, we're quite lacking in matters of due diligence, because I keep saying, and been to different countries and seeing what they're able to implement. The number of blueprints that come out of this country, Kenya, is unbelievable. Just the other day, we saw the story of Konza City and how Ethiopia basically took this same blueprint.
We gave them. Yes, please.
They took it, ran with it, did the same thing in the country and are now benefiting from it. And here we are with our fingers up our noses and still not able to do the same thing for an idea with the blueprint. An idea that you gave to somebody else, I don't understand. Here we are, a company that has come into this country telling you that we're able to do 1, 2, 3. It's not a matter of did they find oil or not. That was not the bone of contention. Here it was that they said we're able to do this. The due diligence that was necessary to be taken at that point. Then to say, all right, where have you worked in the world previously? What have you been able to do? Can we take a look at your books, for example, and see if you have the capacity to do this for us? Because I went to Turkana and I saw the people in Turkana looking at livelihoods for the next 20 years that they were going to be able to bank on. Civil society organizations had camped in Turkana already. The people, yes, the people in the towns, surrounding towns, were ready for a new life.
Lodwar has
because
grown.
they were looking at how they were going to be able to benefit from this resource. People's lives for the next 20 years had been planned out.
Months later, they're still smuggling crude oil across the border in jerrycans.
Listen. Tallow oil
Yeah.
has 150 licenses across 25 countries.
So there's no reason for you to doubt.
No. These are just statistics. And with 76 producing fields, that is in 2012. This company comes from Ireland. By the way, it even has a primary listing in the London Stock Exchange.
Yeah.
Okay? Net worth of the company is in the region of 2.75 billion. Now, what this tells you, if it's in the London Stock Exchange, eco shareholders mingi ndogo ndogo.
Yes.
Okay? Now, that we have a problem with this oil. Again, there's nothing that has been written here that indicates to me that we do not have.
That's
oil.
not the
I think
problem.
we
That's
do.
not
Not the
the
issue.
contention at
Yes.
all. That's not the problem.
So,
Even the editorial on the Standard says, although the country has earned nearly 1.2 billion through the early oil pilot scheme in 2,000 and 4,000 barrels, no one knows exactly when commercial production will begin. The government and Tallow have different timelines. The government thinks it will be in 18 months after a final investment decision has been made. This, according to the government, is the time it will take to construct a crude pipeline from Lokichar to Lamu. But Tallow says it will take 3 years to complete the pipeline. Basically, what this story is doing today, and plus the editorial on the Standard, is saying, look, we have had oil for all these years. Now we are seeing Tallow, the company itself, having serious financial issues globally, and we seem not to have a clear plan with the government and this company.
And there needs to be
When
provision.
are we going to start benefiting from this oil?
In
That
case
is what is
in
being
case you
raised.
don't deliver in a certain timeline, then we need to shift tact and do something different when it comes to you serving us in the way that you promised when this deal was struck. And I have listened to a TED talk that actually got me thinking, because I wish I had noted down the name of this woman, because she said when she was sitting on the other side, the multinationals, on several negotiations with the foreign African government officials, she says that when you go into the room, you're an African, but you're sitting on the other side. First of all, the officials are extremely intimidated by the fact that these people are even just of a different skin color, second of all. And when you talk to some of these people who go to strike deals with African nations, many of them say they prefer Africa, because there's no pushback. When you go to Asia with your blueprints that are having a 20-80, disproportionate ratio of profit, they tell you go back, rethink this and write it again. So they will send you back over and over again. But when it comes to Africa,
Just
we're
anything.
really happy. We're like,
Take
yes,
anything.
we
Just
sign,
give
we
11
sign, we
million on
sign.
the side.
They're so intimidated.
And you get the contract.
So we need to rethink how we do this. It's not you can't just be pointing fingers at other companies. We need to be doing it ourselves.
The arrangement isn't just signed.
Yeah.
This is where that ministry we keep speaking of comes into preeminence. People sign because they are promised something, and usually there is a prepayment.
And
The World Bank calls what we're talking is a pre-resource curse, meaning, but it bedevils predominantly African countries, where we get into a venture that is in the making.
Yeah.
We invest, and the net result usually is that you are faced with a situation where your partner is more likely to exit rather than to stay.
Trix, thank you very much for joining us this
Thank you
morning
for
on
having
the
me.
Morning Express. Thank you very much to your audience as well on KTN Morning Express. Keep it right here on Spice FM, because we'll be discussing the issue of scandals in government. We'll be talking about the U.S. Secretary of State is visiting Africa, and Nduwoko will be telling us what she thinks about those kind of visits. Trix Ngaro, we hope to see you again tomorrow on KTN Morning Express and
See
Spice
you
FM.
next
Good morning.
time.
7 o'clock.